Welcome to the GM's Chat, is a regular show that we do here on Wayfarers League every Sunday. Sarah is away at the moment, so I am actually going to be hosting for this evening, and I'm joined by Fergus.
Yo, what is up?
Yeah, this is the show where we just kind of talk about being a GM, and people in the audience can throw questions to us about GMing, and we will answer them. Currently, I think I'm the only person in our audience, so I...
Why didn't you ask us a question?
Yeah, why don't I ask us a question? I don't have any questions, that's why I don't ask one.
This is just like a ramble, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a more apt name is the GM's Ramble, because that's what we end up doing.
We do ramble quite a bit. We do cover. Occasionally, when we do have an audience in, we do actually answer questions. You'll notice the layout is very different. It's because I do not have access to the normal layout that Sarah uses, and also my streaming program doesn't hook up to the Twitch very well, so I can't have like the chat appear on screen or anything like that. So it's real bare bones today as we go through this. But Fearg and I were just having a chat about some stuff because we both picked up the Call of Cathulhu books, and so we're talking about that for a bit. We're talking about Pathfinder. You may have seen the recent blog post that I did, which was a comparison of the new Pathfinder video game to its tabletop counterpart, because I played through that campaign for 3 years, and it's a lot of fun, and I really want to run it at some point. Because Pathfinder is it's a very meaty version of D&D. Like, if you've played 5e, you would understand how Pathfinder works, because mostly it's the same basic concept. You're rolling a d20 and you're adding a stat to it. But the numbers get very big. And there's also a few kind of like other rules and bits and pieces in it which are slightly different. Not massively so, but there's mostly just extra things that you have to keep track of.
I can't speak on Pathfinder as I have never played it.
It is wonderful and it is good fun, but it is just a lot. And like this is actually my old Pathfinder character sheet. We had a lot of extra mechanics in our game because there was a whole different system. But that's that's what the sheet looks like over 2 pages. And it obviously looks like a lot. You probably couldn't even read it on that, but
no.
I mean, I'm most definitely not. But it's mostly got the same stuff. Like, it's got your 6 basic ability scores. It's got a list of skills. The skill list is a bit more intensive than 5e's is. It lists your hit points. It lists your speeds, your armor class, your initiative, much like that. But then it's got extra things, like it's got 3 different types of armor class. Because your armor class is different, for example, if you're being caught by surprise. You don't get your dexterity and dodging bonuses to your armor class if someone's catching you by surprise. As opposed to 5e, which is just you get advantage if you surprise someone. There's an actual, like, you have a different armor class for it. Or you also have a different armor class if someone's hitting you with a touch spell attack. Because if all someone has to do is touch you to be able to hurt you, wearing heavy plate armor does not prevent that from happening. So that's
that could be quite because I've always found it weird when in 5e, if somebody's casting like Toll the Dead or another touch spell, a paladin with an AC of like 22 is somehow better at dodging a touch spell than like a monk or a wizard with an AC of maybe like 15. And you're like,
Yeah, that's just, and I mean, Toll the Dead is a saving throw spell, but I mean, like, yes.
Is it? It is.
But yeah, it's
not Toll the Dead.
But exactly what you're saying.
What's the cleric can? inflict wounds. That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking
inflict
of.
wounds, for example. Yeah, so inflict wounds, where literally you just have to be able to touch a person to inflict damage on them, and an armor class with full plate armor gives you better defense against that. It just doesn't make sense. It's very true,
No,
which is why they have
unless
that.
unless unless you are playing a very small person in a very large set of armor, and you just like
you're
shrink
just
into it like a turtle.
you're basically just in a tank.
Yeah. I go into turtle mode.
You just turtle into a tank. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how the system works. So like, my character in this had his base armor class was 56 because, like I said, the numbers do get very, very high in this game. And to be fair, 56, even in Pathfinder, 56 is pretty high. And especially because I could also bump that up to a 62 if I wanted to, with one of my abilities. It gets stupid high. Most Pathfinder campaigns, your armor class will go up into maybe the 30s, maybe 40s if you're doing a tank build. But because of this particular campaign has a system in it, it's a wonderful thing that Paizo does with their campaigns, is they'll create a campaign to introduce a new mechanical idea, and they'll never use that mechanical idea again for the rest of, like, for any other campaign.
That seems very, very. That seems very interesting and fun, but also incredibly wasteful and annoying.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. The one they used in this one, it was called the Mythic system, which basically was after a certain point in the campaign, your characters became mythic heroes. So you got, along with your 20 levels of normal class levels, you got 10 levels that you could level up in mythic levels, which gave you insane abilities and powers. And some of the things they did were as basic as just bumping up your armor class. Some of them were as insane as I stabbed someone with a rapier and basically just blasted him off a bridge. Because we have an ability that was called, I think it was called Mythic Strike or something like that, where if you hit someone, they had to make a saving throw, and if they failed the saving throw, they were blown back 15 feet. Yeah, so it's
I could get down for that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and the GM that we had for this he'd been playing Pathfinder longer than I'd probably been alive at that point. He's absolutely fantastic GM for that system, and the systems he's run for me, I think he's really, really great. I don't think he's the kind of GM that would be good at like 5e, just not his kind of style. But he was very, very good in this system, and so that stuff like that, where it was like keeping track of all these mechanics, he just knew most of them from 20 odd years of playing this game, so that made things a lot easier. But yeah, the Mythic system is insane. He actually homebrewed some additional rules for the Mythic system to make it less stupid. Because there's things like you got a number of points that are called hero points, and you could expend a hero point to re-roll a failed roll if you wanted to. And so he homebrewed a rule that made it that you can spend a hero point to re-roll a failed roll as long as the failed roll is not a natural one. If it's a natural one, you take the natural one.
Yeah, because otherwise you just be re-rolling your nat ones all the time.
And this, and so with this system as well, like, if you move on your turn, if you take a movement, you can't then do a full round of attacks if you have multi-attack. You can only take a single attack if you've moved.
Okay.
Because doing a multi-attack is a full round action, and the reason for that is, like, by the time we'd finished this, I was making four or five attacks a round, so it gets kind of stupid.
Yeah, if you move your full movement and then do a full round of attacks.
Yeah, and so one of the other things you could do with hero points is to spend a hero point to get an additional action. So in the kind of basic version of this, you could spend a hero point, move up to someone, and then do a full round of attacks. And he basically made a rule that it was like, no, you just can't do that. You can spend a point to get an extra action, but you can't do it to do that, to move and then do a full round of attacks, because that's just stupid.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about a DM that has to homebrew rules to make something less ridiculous.
Yeah, it was.
The inner DM in me is like, no, that's backwards. You
make it more ridiculous.
You homebrew things to make things cooler and more ridiculous, not the. The inner DM is conflicted, but I understand why you did that, because...
It's more to make it so that it wasn't just completely broken.
Yeah,
because it would just get stupid after a point.
As someone who plays a hasted fighter and who has a hasted fighter in his campaign, I understand both the pain and the utter joy of moving a long distance and then taking like 7 attacks.
Yeah.
But in 5e,
it's different in 5e.
I feel like it's different because the numbers aren't
as high, and also fighter types in 5e are at an extreme disadvantage over spellcasters in that spellcasters, after a certain point of leveling up, just have a much higher damage potential out there, damage potential output, whereas fighters never
kind of really,
they're kind of capped at a certain point, and so getting more attacks is pretty much the only way they deal more damage. Whereas like in this game, on a basic attack, every hit I was doing was 1d6 plus 40 in damage.
So you could, at max damage, you'd be doing 46 hit points.
46 per attack. So when I'm when I'm doing 4 or 5 attacks in a round,
that's
yeah.
No, that's too much basic math.
It gets so stupid, right? And so like the ranger in the party, because Rangers in Pathfinder are really freaking good. This is the thing that really bugs me in 5e. Is Rangers in 5e are shite.
I'm going to have a look. You say your thing, because then I want to have a little rant about Rangers in D&D.
Yeah,
because
Rangers in D&D are rubbish.
There are some things that need to be said about Rangers in D&D, and I have things I need to say. So you say your thing before I go on my little mini tangent rant.
Rangers in Pathfinder, and by extension 3.5, because Pathfinder is kind of an extension of 3.5, Rangers in Pathfinder are so freaking good. Because when you take your favourite enemy bonus, it's not just you know more things about them. You know how to hurt them, you know where to hit them, and all this sort of stuff. So you get crazy bonuses to your attack rolls, and crazy bonuses to your damage rolls against your favored enemy types. And as you level up, those bonuses go up as well. So by the time we finish this campaign at level 20, Mythic level 10, our ranger against demons was doing, like, on average, 600 points of damage a round. Like, and I know these numbers are obviously ridiculous compared to 5e, because the numbers are just very different. But like they were doing over 600 points of damage around, whereas like the big bad of the campaign, like I might even look up the stat block for the big bad of that campaign, because we took him out in like in something like 5 or 6 rounds, if I remember correctly.
Oh wow!
It was, yeah. Let me see if I can find their stats, because
you find his stats, and I will start my little mini rant, because Rangers in 5e, I feel, get bad stick.
Yeah,
they have problems and they have issues in the player's handbook, and I get that not everybody can buy all the supplements, and that I have a problem with buying supplements for tabletop games. I understand that, but Rangers, if played, I don't want to say if played correctly, because that also brings up things about how people play characters, but Rangers can be such good utility characters, because you've got...
Yeah.
Okay, they can't heal as well as clerics, but they can heal. And so they are additional... If you have a cleric in your party and you have an ranger and your cleric goes down, you still have a ranger to heal with. They can be pretty good damage dealers if they get their spells off right, and
It's
they have some really cool and fun abilities. Chris, who plays a ranger in the Everchosen campaign that we stream, he plays a ranger, and his ability to detect planar portals within a mile of him is really useful in a campaign where there's lots of planar portals and planar travel is about to become quite a big thing. And I just feel that people just go, Rangers are just crap fighters. Why would you play a Ranger? It's like, because they're fun and they're cool and they can do lots of useful things. Play more Rangers, guys.
Well, no, so this is the thing, because like, yes, you're absolutely right. Rangers, certain abilities that Rangers have do make them very good utility characters. The thing is, Rangers were never utility characters before this. They were damage dealers, and big time damage dealers. I just looked up this stat block. So this guy, is a challenge rating of 29 by default. So this is his basic stat block when he is not in his domain. We fought him in his domain, which means he's even more powerful there. But when he's not in his domain and he doesn't have any buffs up, this guy has 742 hit points by default. So, and our Rangers on average doing 600 points of damage a round on this guy.
So he could two-shot him.
She could have two-shot him if...
Oh, sorry. I didn't know the character.
Yeah, no, it's fine. She could have two-shot him if it weren't for the fact that he was in the domain, in which case he's way more powerful in his own domain, because he has control over everything there, basically. And also he was buffed to shit, so he had temporary hit points and all sorts of crap. And he's got, like, regeneration. And so there's a lot of different, like, factors that kind of balance that out. But, like, yeah, if in a fight that took place outside of that, she could have two-shot him in 2 rounds, taken that thing down single-handedly. I mean, actually, to be fair, probably wouldn't have happened, because the Demon Lord probably would have just stomped her into the ground after the first round. But it's there, and that's the kind of level of, like, crazy power. So this is, I think, what people misgiving with Rangers is, yes, they work pretty well in 5e for utility, but Rangers were never meant to be utility. They were always meant to be big damage output characters that were the badass fighters, and that, because Rangers are based on Aragon.
Yeah, Aragon is a ranger.
Aragon is a ranger. Aragon is not a utility person in Lord of the Rings.
Well, I don't know.
I mean, he
can track. He knows.
But
he knows
he's got
a lot of shit.
Yeah. Well, no, he can track. He's got obviously the knowledge and that, which Rangers do get as well, which is why favored enemy and favored terrain stuff, that gives you like all these bonuses to tracking, and gives you bonuses to like knowing what your enemy is. That's something that you get in Pathfinder as well, like and all these different versions of D&D. Rangers always had those abilities. But that doesn't make them utility. Utility is things like rogues and bards who have who are like the support characters that can do all this sort of stuff, like picking locks, disabling traps, buffing their allies, and things like that. Rangers were based on Aragon, which whenever you get into a fight as Aragon takes on a whole horde of Urukai and just wipes the floor with them. That's what Rangers were meant to be. And in 5e, they're not that. They're not that anymore. Which is, I think, why people have misgivings with Rangers now and don't like them as much, is because the things that made Rangers what they were are just not there anymore. Which is why they did the Ranger variant that Unearthed Arcana did, where you also got a slight damage bonus to your favorite enemies. But even that was really small. And it like really didn't make a difference. Like, a Ranger in 3.5 or Pathfinder against an enemy that wasn't their favorite enemy could hold their own. Like, they were still pretty competent fighters, but they were basically fighters in those situations. It was only when they came across things that were their favorite enemies that they would just wipe the floor with everything. And the beautiful thing about playing a pre-done adventure path in Pathfinder or in 3.5 is you generally knew what kind of enemies were coming up. If you play Wrath of the Righteous, you know you're fighting demons.
Demons.
If you play Kingmaker, you know that mostly you're fighting humans and fae. So when you're picking your favorite enemies, you pick the ones that are most applicable to the campaign you're playing in, and then you're just wiping the floor with everything that comes up. And there's a lot of kind of different builds. Like Paladins were also way cooler in those old systems, I believe. Like it's been no secret to most people who know me that I'm not a fan of Paladins in 5e or in general mostly. But they were way better in the old systems if you were fighting evil things, because smiting wasn't just I'm going to add a bunch of dice to my damage. Smiting was, I declare smite on this particular creature, which means I get to add my charisma bonus to my armor class. I get to add my charisma bonus to my attack rolls, and I get to add my level to my damage rolls against that one creature. And once you get to a certain point in the game, you can take feats which improve like the stats that you get for your smiting abilities. You can take all sorts of different things that give you extra uses of smite each day. So playing a paladin in Pathfinder in 3.5, charisma was like the best stat you could put points into, rather than in the 5e where you want to put all your points really into strength to get those extra to hits and damages. All of the points that you want to put from these other systems, you want to put into charisma, because that is how you're actually going to put out a huge chunk of damage. So
yeah, I suppose I'm not. Yeah, I always just like the idea that a ranger is somebody who the way I see rangers is that they are somebody who has spent a large part of their time away from civilization, but not so much to where they become a druid. So they should be like a half druid fighter. And so they have some utility, but they can do a little bit of damage if need be, and they kind of sit on that line of I mean they're a half caster and
yeah, I mean that is very much
half casters in 5e. Most of them are crap anyway. Like if you play a half, why would you because you can't do as much damage as a non-caster. Your non-magic damage isn't as powerful as a caster, and you don't get as many attacks as non-casters do to compensate from that. So you kind of get none of the good and all of the bad from both sides of that line.
And I don't think that's very much it, right? Because and this is very much a kind of 5e centered idea, because rangers basically in 5e have been taken to take part druid, part fighter, smash them together, make a ranger, and paladins is you take cleric and you take fighter and you smash them together and that becomes a paladin.
Artificers wizard and
rogue maybe.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, because they get proficiency in thieves' tools
and stuff like that. So there's a lot of that kind of like smashing of classes to do that. And to be fair, Pathfinder did do that, but it wasn't for the base classes. It was for like extra classes that you could get in expanded books, and those are just cool. You could be like a Slayer, which is half rogue, half ranger.
That sounds cool.
So you get favored enemies and sneak attack, which meant like your damage output just got stupid at that point, like stupid high. You got Scold, which were like half bard, half barbarians. When we did it, I played a swashbuckler, which was half fighter, half gunslinger. Which I never got to use guns, but I got one of a kind of reflavoring of a gunslinger ability, which was called Grit. Which if anyone who's watched Critical Role and remembers Percy, his gunslinger using grit points was actually a conversion over from Pathfinder's Gunslinger into 5e. Because you got these points. I got panache points because it's a swashbuckler and it's all about being fancy. And it allowed me to do some crazy different abilities. And there were fights that we had that I did not attack the enemy at all. Because it was far more beneficial for me to just fuck with the enemy whilst my companions did the actual damage. Because I had an ability which was called Superior Feint. And basically what that meant was I could use my action instead of attacking to deliberately miss the attack and kind of put them off balance. And when I did that, it removed all of their dexterity bonus to armor class, all of their dodging bonuses to armor class, all of that just went. And so they were left with just a fraction of their regular armor class. So when we were fighting against high level rogues that had like crazy high armor classes from their dexterity bonuses, me doing this maneuver would drop their armor class from like 40 something down to 20 something. And at that point, like the rest of the party were just like hitting on every single shot and taking them down real quick. So there's also a lot of like tactical play that you can like use these crazy abilities to do. I think the one that 5e definitely is superior on is fighters, because 5e fighters are actually really good, and Pathfinder and 3.5 fighters are really naff. You get more feats to kind of build a bit more of a custom character than you would normally have, but you basically don't get any particularly interesting abilities just from the class. So yeah, fighters were always just kind of a bit naff in Pathfinder and 3.5. Bards were a lot of fun. I quite like bards in that system, especially compared to 5e, because the inspiration.
I like 5e bards.
I mean, they are.
I know their inspiration is a bit naff.
Well, yeah.
Especially when you forget that you can do it.
Yeah.
And then you're suddenly like, oh shit! I've had this whole ability that I've just been not using.
And it's very rare that the inspiration dice even become useful, because it's like, okay, you can add a d6 up to a d12 depending on what level you are to any roll that you make. Is like, and you can choose to add that dice after you've made the roll, but usually after you've made the roll, like 9 times out of 10, either you've already succeeded at the roll, or you've rolled so low that adding this extra dice is not actually going to make a difference.
Well, I suppose if it's the higher levels, if it's like the D12.
D12 probably more so.
That could probably that has more chance of making a difference than the D6. But by the time you're high enough to the level to where your inspiration die is a D12,
you forget about it.
Even if characters are rolling low, their stats are so
high
that there's no point in rolling a D12, because there'll be that cutoff point where it's like, oh well, I failed, and even if I get a 12,
because the DCs in 5e never get that high. Like 30 is the highest it will ever get, and even that is meant to be just insane, right? So it's not. Yeah, it's kind of a whole thing, and then when you've got like a rogue with expertise, by the time you're like level, you get to a certain level, you're adding plus 15 to every roll in particular stats. And, when you're adding a plus 15, adding a d12 to the roll
doesn't make a difference.
It's not really going to make much of a difference.
And
then if you look at like old bards from 3.5 and Pathfinder, it wasn't, first of all, it wasn't just a dice that you assigned to one character that you could give them. When you started
it was party-wide, wasn't it?
Everyone in the party got a plus bonus to everything. So you would be in battle, you inspire courage, and everyone, even at first level, everyone just gets a +1 to hit and damage. Which at first level, a +1 to hit and damage is pretty good. But as you level up, it goes up and up and up to the point where you are doing it like a +5 to hit and damage. And bards also get access to a spell called Good Hope, and if you've got Good Hope running, that's an additional +2 to hit and damage. So in a fight at high level, bards are giving everyone in the party +7 to all of their hits and all of their damage rolls, and that's a significant number. Like even in the insane numbers of Pathfinder, +7 to your attack rolls and damage rolls is significant, and that can turn the tide in a game. So
there are some things 5e does very, very well. Accessibility is the big one. It is extremely accessible.
It's designed for accessibility. We've talked about this so many times on
Yeah,
chat at this point. It's designed for accessibility.
And so we're not going to go into that.
No.
It does fighters very well in terms of class, and lots of there are some things
I will say, I do like wizards and clerics and druids in 3.5 in Pathfinder. I do really like them because they do get a really cool range of spells and abilities that do really cool things. The spell casting system for 5th edition is easier, because that's what it's designed to be. I don't know. It's one of the things where it's very different. I don't think I like it more, but I don't think I like it less.
That's fair.
Because having the thing where you can cast a spell using a higher level spell slot to do more damage, that's kind of cool, and that's easy to kind of break down, and it does mean that having low level spells is still useful in higher level gameplay, because you could just cast them at higher levels if you need to. But in Pathfinder 3.5, once you got access to 5th and 6th level spells, first level spells kind of became pointless unless you were buffing. It was easy to just put like some really good low level buffs up early on and then use those, but outside of that, it really wasn't like Magic Missile caps out at 5d4 plus 5 in Pathfinder. Because the way that the spells scale is not by the spell slot, but by the level of the character. So you would get each missile does a d4 plus 1 like it does in 5e, but you would get a missile for every level that you were of wizard. And even casting it at first level as a first level spell slot, it still would cast like if you were a 5th level wizard, it would still cast it as 5d4 plus 5.
So even if you were like a 10th level, it would just be...
But it caps at that, and it doesn't go any higher. So
I don't...
a lot of spells would cap at a certain point, which it makes sense because obviously if you're a 20th level character, a 20th level wizard, and you can use a first level spell slot and do 20d4 plus 20, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah, it's very dumb.
That's why they do cap it, but it does mean that those spell slots kind of become afterburner thoughts, and like if you've done like several encounters in a day and all you've got left is those low level spells, you could still use them and they're still useful then, but all of the cool stuff is high level, and some of the spells you get are just brilliant. I love some of the spells that you get in Pathfinder because they do just very cool things. I've been playing through Wrath of the Righteous, the video game, and if I get into a fight where there's a whole load of different enemies, I have my wizard create a hungry pit, which is basically the Sarlacc from Return of the Jedi. It just creates a big pit in the battlefield with loads of tentacles coming out, and it will literally just latch on to anything that's nearby and drag it into the pit. And it's just like, okay, cool. Those things are going to just stay in the pit for most of this fight, and they'll take a bit of damage each round, whilst I deal with the ones that didn't fall into the pit. And then once those are all dead, I can dispel the pit, and then I can deal with the ones that were in the pit. And it becomes really fun, like, tactical stuff of, like, breaking up the battlefield so you're not dealing with too much in one go and stuff like that, which is great. Mirror image is insane in those systems. It's one of the best defensive spells you can cast, because unless a creature has true sight, it's such a bitch to try and hit someone.
That's the same. Oh no, because in 5e
in 5e, so mirror image in 5e is still good, but it gives you 3 mirror images.
Mirrors,
and so the idea in 5e is if someone hits you and you have a mirror image up, you roll a d20, and if you get above a certain number, they hit an image instead of you. In Pathfinder, when you cast mirror image, you get a number of images equal to, I think it's something like a d6 plus half your level or something like that. So we were fighting things that had like 9 images going at one time and shit like that. And the way that it works in that system is if you hit something that has a mirror image up, you then have to roll. So say, for example, you've got a creature who's got 5 mirror images. You hit them. You have to roll a d6. If you get a 1 on the d6, you hit them. If you get a 2 to 6 on the d6, you hit one of their images. And then the dice goes down as the number of images go down. So it's rather than just being the person with the images rolls a dice to see if they hit an image or not, it's much more likely that you're going to hit an image.
Because
the more images there are.
If they have like 9 images, you're rolling a d10.
You're rolling a d10, and in order to hit them, you have to get a 1 on the d10.
1.
So huge chunk of those fights is just taking out the images as quickly as possible, so that you can actually focus your attacks on them.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that as a.
It's a cool defensive spell, and it works
very cool.
Really well, and it's a real bitch if you have displacement on at the same time. Because if you get displacement on at the same time, you not only have to roll to see if you hit an image, you then have to roll a 50-50 chance if you hit them at all. Because displacement basically just means that your image shimmers so much that it's near impossible to just see which point of your body is actually your body. And all of the mirror images have displacement as well if you put displacement on with a mirror image. So it stacks and it's insane.
I don't. No, you see now that's where I've gone from. Oh, I like that to I don't like that now.
It's very cool, but obviously True Sight does bypass all of this. It's very, very cool defensive stuff, but it means that when you're in these kind of combat scenarios, spells like Dispel Magic have a real good function in combat. Like if you
whereas in combat you never in 5e
you never use Dispel Magic in combat because it's you use Counterspell. Counterspell gets used all the time in combat.
Counterspell. Oh, that spell is so annoying.
I know.
It's the worst. It is the worst 5e spell because it boils down every magical fight to
who has the most third level spell slots.
Who has the most third level spell slots, and it's you're just like, oh cool, so this is just going to be two witches pointing at each other going nope.
And I think,
like, okay, well, this isn't fun.
As Marina, I try not to do that too much. I try to be more tactical.
I have a feeling that's because you want to make the fights interesting for yourself.
Yeah,
and you're a very nice person, and I thank you for that.
Definitely. The fight. This is the thing that I think a lot of new GMs kind of fall into. Let's actually talk about an actual GMing thing rather than just talking about Pathfinder and 5e.
This is about half-casters in 5e.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a thing that actually I think a lot of new GMs kind of fall into a trap of being that they get worried if they start doing too much damage to their players in combat, and it's like, no, that's what makes a combat encounter interesting. For me, if I'm running an combat encounter, I know it's a good combat encounter if I take one or two members of the party one or two party members down to 0.
Yeah.
If I knock 2 people unconscious in a fight, that's a good fight for me. I'm happy with that.
I know that because I still even I've been GMing now 5 years. Is it 5? I think it's 5. It's about that number. And even I still go, oh shit, I'm taking members of the party down. Fuck, this is bad. But that fight you guys had with Calf and the head of the cult, where like 4 of you went down.
Was it Lord Arena? Was that the one?
Yeah, Lord Arena. Yeah, that was it. Lord Arena.
Yeah, 4 people went down.
4 of you went down, and you guys were like, yeah, and I was like, okay, good, everybody's enjoying it. Nobody's freaking out.
No, we do. Those are the best fights because it's just like, oh my god, this is actually intense and there's actually stuff happening.
And even as I know like the intense fights are the ones where you get out of it and like 4 of your party members went down, or you got out and you're all on like 2 HP.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my god, we only just got through that. But every now and then, even as an experienced GM, you're still like, I'm as a person, I'm still like, I don't want to hurt the party because I don't want anybody not to have fun, and you've just kind of got to get that out of your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go, it's okay. It's okay to hurt the party.
Yeah.
I think
it's so,
but you've got to be careful not to go too far the other way.
Yeah, you don't want.
It can never be. I'm the GM and I am against the party.
Right.
It's always.
It's about creating something exciting, and like this is the thing, right? Is you don't want every encounter to be like that. You don't want every encounter to end up with like 3 people unconscious, because that just becomes boring and it becomes stressful and tense, and tension is great in moderation in a game, but if it's too much and it's too consistent, then it just becomes unenjoyable. But yeah, being afraid to do any harm to the party is definitely not the way to go, because then it's also boring because there's no stakes. If your party are walking through every single encounter, there's no risk, there's no stakes to it whatsoever. Last time we did the villains game and you guys were fighting the purple worm, I completely misjudged the balance of that encounter with the NPCs I had put on your side.
And so it became quite boring because we were like,
it did.
Oh, we just walked over a purple worm. We're like level 7.
Yeah, which is why I then added a second worm that I modified the stats to make them draconic as well.
And it ate me, and I nearly died.
Yeah,
and I was like, that was such a cool moment.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you let me do that. I was like, can I just fail the save? Yeah, can I just deliberately get eaten and like cut my way out of it?
Yeah. Well, this is okay, and this is a thing as well, because we had this discussion during that.
We did.
Is players seem to have this idea that if they get swallowed by a creature, they can attack it from the inside. No, there is no. When you're inside of a creature, there is no space to move. You are the reason.
You're restrained.
Whenever you see swallowed on a monster stat block, it says restrained. It's because you are restrained. You cannot move. So if you're if you've got like a dagger or something, you could probably get a few good stabs in from the inside. But if you with your character who was wielding a greatsword, it's like there's no swinging room for a greatsword, right? So
no, but that was such a, because I have a feeling that was so on character as well. It's like, because I was like, yes, eat me, and then it ate me, and I was like, oh shit, this is bad.
He is. No, wait, this isn't how I imagined it working at all.
Yeah, I'm like, oh no, this isn't how I planned this out to go at all.
Yeah.
And now I'm dying. Oops.
And the thing is, and I only say this because I've seen this happen multiple times. It happened in Critical Role at one point as well. I've seen it happen in mine. Ooh, did the stream just go down? What was...
Oh no.
What was that? Oh no, maybe it was just my computer. That was really weird. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what the heck was going on there. That was really weird. My computer just did a thing. But no, the stream's still going. But yeah, this is people thinking getting swallowed by a creature is going to give them an advantage is really bad. We did have that happen in Pathfinder. It was one of the funniest moments in the game because our barbarian. So we had two running jokes, character running jokes in the game. Well, we had more, but there was two that kind of really were quite prominent. And one was centered around my character, and one was centered around our friend Dean's character. So Dean's character was a human barbarian called Anvil. And Anvil's approach to combat was very chaotic. And it was very fun to watch. And we always knew something was going to happen. Because Dean would be sat at the table and he would start asking questions to the GM. And not the normal questions that you would normally expect a player to ask the GM. He was sitting there and he was like, GM, is it raining right now? And as soon as something like that came out of his mouth, we all just went, oh my god, what the fuck is he going to do? And we...
Raining? What can he...
Yeah, and no, this is exactly the sort of thought process we had. We were like, what is he going to do if it's raining? What on earth does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
And it was, every single time, it was something insane. And we did one fight in that entire campaign, which was against a dragon. There was one dragon fight in the whole campaign, which is fine. It's not a dragon-centered game. It's a demon-centered game. And he was... we were in the fight, and he goes, GM, how high off the ground is specifically the dragon's head? And we're like, okay, where's he going with this? And
that makes you go,
makes you go, okay. And what he ended up doing was, he didn't get swallowed by the creature, but he did climb inside its mouth. And so he spent the fight inside its mouth with one arm free, so he could only attack with like one arm. But what it did do was it prevented the creature from using its bite attack on anyone else, because it had a barbarian in its mouth, so it couldn't use its bite attack as part of its multi-attack. It also meant that any time it tried to use its breath weapon, he kind of corked it. So he kept on just taking the breath weapon. But he's a barbarian, so he had like loads of damage resistance and loads of hit points.
So I'm guessing he auto-failed all of the breath weapons and kind of took all of them.
Basically, but he also had, we knew it was like an acid breathing dragon, so we put up acid resistance on everyone. So we all ignored the first something like 20 points of acid damage anytime we took acid damage. So he's just in its mouth, ignoring 20 points of acid damage every time it uses its breath weapon.
Is it not constantly biting him?
It was...
But I suppose as a barbarian...
Yeah, it was... and then as a barbarian, he has just natural resistance to a lot of this damage anyway. Yeah. So... For that entire fight, he basically spent the entire time inside the dragon's mouth. And so the running joke was we would call it an anvil strat, which was when that would happen. And the other running joke we had was my character, whose name was Halaval, where whenever... It started very early on when my character was kind of scouting for the party, because I was the stealthy character. And... So I would kind of like stealth into a situation, and either I would accidentally trigger a fight, or I would see something that I thought I could handle and couldn't, and I would just go, I'm just going to take care of this while I'm here, and charge in. And so anytime I charged into a fight without waiting for my companions to catch up to me where I was scouting, we would call it pulling a Halaval. And so there was just two running gags that we had throughout that campaign, was anvil strats and pulling a Halaval. And I wasn't the only person who pulled a Halaval, other characters did as well. But
Why didn't the dragon spit the barbarian out?
Because the barbarian was specifically holding himself inside the dragon's mouth.
There we go. There's the key bit of information.
Yeah, he was
that
not
ties it.
wanting the dragon to spit him out because it's.
Yeah, it's. I do like those moments where, as a player, and as a GM, you ask and get asked questions that make you go, "Where are you going with this? And what are you thinking?" And with me, it's normally, how flammable is the room we're in?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't like that. Stop asking me.
Is that line
So-
from is it Crap Guide to D&D or something like that? I can't remember. There's a line. It was like, I didn't ask how big the room is. I said I cast fireball. Yeah.
And so
That-
from that, a lot of my rooms have suddenly become very fireproof.
Yeah, it's like, what is this room made of? Asbestos. Just stop trying to burn everything.
Yeah, it's, this room is made from water. I'm
Yeah,
not sure how the walls are made of water, but they are.
very true. Yeah, we'll figure out the logistics for that later. I do see we do have some people in the audience. If anyone does have any questions for us, because we've just been talking about Pathfinder and 5e and stuff like that. If anyone actually has some questions, GMing questions or anything like that they want to throw towards us, please just pop them in the chat.
We are really living up to our name of GM Rambles.
We are really GM rambling today. Yeah.
This is
This is what happens when Sarah's not here to moderate us.
Sarah, if you're watching, this is what we've turned your show into. This is ours now.
When there's
This train's off the rails.
it's an unmoderated conversation that ends up being insane. But yeah, it's stuff like that.
We've taken this train off the rails.
So
It's never coming back.
it's it's going. Like we've got like 4 minutes left, 3 minutes left maybe.
Oh, well, there
It's so yeah, any questions, please do throw them up so we can
we
talk
will
about
answer them
something.
in the last, we will answer in the last.
We'll answer them if needs be, if they come through. But yeah, geez, we have gone on about it. But no, it's a cool. I love this system and I love these topics, and I think. And I know I'm not the only one, because I know you yourself have kind of talked about wanting to move away from 5e, and I know
So looking forward to it.
Sarah's talked about it, and I know a lot of GMs in the Wayfarers League have talked about not wanting to run 5e anymore, wanting to do different systems. And Pathfinder is a system I do really just like. It is a system that is where it just has a lot more mechanics to it, but it does allow you to make you more badass.
Yeah, for me, it's not even. I want a more meaty experience. I like the simplicity of 5e. I really do. I'm really bored of D&D.
Yeah. No,
and that's not a criticism on any of the games that I'm in or running or D&D as a system. It's just when D&D is the only thing that you've been running for 5 years, that you get to a point where you're just like,
yeah,
okay, I would like a change.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like eating pasta every night for 5 years, and you're like, I like pasta. Pasta's really good.
And
I'd like something different.
And this is the kind of question for me, and it's something I've said a lot in previous episodes and in other conversations, is one of the major issues I have with 5e, if we look at it comparatively, is quite a lot of it comes down to the feat system and the way that they change that, because the feat system is kind of irrelevant at this point. It's even an optional rule. The lack of customizability on characters makes it so like they keep introducing these subclasses, but the fact of the matter is every wizard basically plays exactly the same.
Yeah.
Every fighter basically plays exactly the same. Every paladin plays the same. Every bard, every class doesn't matter what subclass you choose, it might give you a bit of flavoring and a bit of kind of like a couple of different abilities, but the bare bones of that class are exactly the same regardless of what subclass you choose, and they play exactly the same. And I'm so bored of it because I want variety in the characters.
You can obviously. I think all of my D&D characters have been wildly different from one another, but that's in terms of their personality and who they are.
And this is the argument that a lot of people make in support of 5e, is that if you want variety in characters, you just change their personality. That's fine, but I would much rather the mechanics react and respond to the different ways that I'm playing my character.
D&D 5e has a serious problem with action economy. It's just awful. Every time my artificer, who I adore to bits, I love her. She's a broken wreck. She's trying to fix herself, and she's perfect. But every time I got into combat, I cast the same 4 spells over and over again, and it made combat boring as shit. Most combats I was like, is it my turn? It's not my turn. I'm on my phone because I know what the bard's casting. I know what the sorcerer's casting. I know what our druid's casting, and I know what our cleric's casting. And there will be cool moments within the combat. Our druid cast a moonbeam in a tavern, and the roof caved in, and the tavern caught fire, and that was super cool and fun. And it was a moment of, oh, I'm snapped out and I'm back in the combat. But for the rest of that fight, I was either trolling through my Twitter feed, or I was on my phone, or I was like, I want this combat to end because I want to get back to the role play, because at least that's where there's some fun. And I know that these are RPGs, they are role-playing games, and role-play is a big part of that.
But D&D is also based on old war games, and combat is also a huge part of the system. So, then that's just it.
And this is coming from me as a player and me as a GM. I much prefer roleplay. I'd rather have a whole role-playing game where there is no combat. But if we're going to have combat, please, for the love of God, make it interesting every time I get into it. Please have it. So, I'm not on my... The way... combat should be interesting for everybody, whether you're doing theatre of the mind, whether you've got a crappily drawn map with like little cardboard tokens that you're moving around, or whether you've got the production value of a show like Critical Role. There should be no difference to how fun combat should be between those three in a good RPG, and D&D doesn't have that. If you've got the production value of Critical Role, combat's going to be a blast because you'll have music and effects and little minis to move around. If you've got Theatre of the Mind, combat's going to be boring because what is it?
I'm 100% on the same page with you in that. Like, Everchosen is the only D&D game that I am currently playing in and not GMing. That I actually do, and I love Marina, and the reason why every other episode I'm trying to buy new spells is because I'm trying to create some fucking variety in how I play her in combat. Because at the moment, like for the longest time, I had one actual damage dealing spell that wasn't a cantrip, which was Chromatic Orb, which quite hilariously at the beginning I couldn't even use because
you didn't have the material.
I didn't have the material component for it. But yeah, I love Marina. I love playing her, and I want to make her interesting in combat. So I keep trying and giving her these new spells so that I can do more different things. So I'm not just doing the same things every single time. And that's really hard to do in this system. And I love looking at Pathfinder and looking at 3.5, and you get a lot of these abilities that are the same. Like, I think whenever we would go into most combat scenarios, our cleric and our paladin would put up the same buffs every single time, because they were just the best buffs that they could put up. But then you end up in a fight which is like, oh, we're fighting against a creature that isn't a demon. This one's undead. Okay, so what does that mean? It's like, well, the paladin can still smite, but a lot of the buffs that he puts up are specific to demons. So now he's got to change and put up buffs that are specific to undead, and he changes his weapon to disrupting rather than holy, and he changes, the cleric. We had an oracle in ours, which is basically an spontaneous caster cleric with some cool added features. Oracles are actually kind of really fun in Pathfinder because you get like a curse, which at early levels gives you like really bad disadvantages, but then as you level up, the curse becomes beneficial. So like you have a curse that like limits your vision to 10 feet of vision in the early levels of the game, but by the higher levels of the game, you've got like blind sight for a certain range and things like that. It's a really cool class. But yeah, the cleric's going into these fights with undead creatures, and instead of doing all of the buffs that they would normally do, they're not wasting their actions putting those spells up. They're just spamming healing spells at the undead, because healing spells damage undead in old systems, which is something weirdly that 5e didn't include, because that's such a big function of how these...
I can kind of see that though.
How these kind of work.
As a feature, it is sort of strange. But then again, my favorite creature in 5e is the Neobog, and that is a creature that if you cast a healing spell at it, it will essentially just die because healing spells hurt it.
Well, that was it, because the idea of healing magic is that it's positive energy. And harming magic is negative energy. But when you create undead creatures, they are fueled by negative energy. So if you were to cast inflict wounds on an undead creature, it would actually heal them. But if you were to cast cure wounds on them, it would harm them. Because you're basically negating the magic that is keeping them in their form of undeath life. That was the idea, lore-wise, behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I hope everybody enjoyed this ramble.
Yeah,
this horrible amalgamation of rants, strange tangents and rambles, but we run 7 minutes over because
we were talking
this
about
train ain't stopping.
It really isn't.
And we probably could go for like another hour,
but we won't, because we're going to spare everyone
yeah.
No, it's true. But yeah, thank you for those who did watch. I saw that people were kind of dropping in and out. But yeah, this was always it's an unmediated nightmare when Sarah isn't here, and we're making the most of it.
It is.
So thanks for watching. We will catch you guys on Tuesday.
Tuesday
for Dungeon Defenders.
Yes, Dungeon Defenders.
Which Fergus and Fee will be joining me again for some Dungeon Defenders.
Let's crump some goblins and ogres and trolls.
That game is a lot of fun.
That game is a lot of fun.
So, but we will catch you guys next time.
Yeah. Does this go up on YouTube?
It will I think. Yeah. So make sure.
So if you are watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, all those good things,
and comment, because all of that engagement really helps to boost us. And
ring the bell.
All that stuff. Yeah. But this is the most unsalesman-like way of doing this. Yes,
Who cares?
Like, comment, subscribe.
This whole thing has been a complete and utter shit show.
It's insane. We might just not upload this one.
No, we are. We're changing the title. It will be.
We're changing to just the GM's chat breaks down into just rambling about different about 5e and Pathfinder and
GM's rant.
The GM's rant. Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Have a good evening.